everybody. Welcome to Fire Engineering Talk Radio in another installment of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, the podcast dedicated to our great volunteer fire service and getting everybody to embrace the message that being considered a professional firefighter has nothing to do with earning a paycheck. It has everything to do with delivering competent and compassionate service, taking care of our customers, and also our own members as well. Thank you for being here this evening. Tom Merrill here. So glad to have you listening in. Today is Tuesday, March 23rd, and we have a nice show lined up for you tonight regarding a very pertinent topic within our volunteer fire service. But first, a couple housekeeping items of note. I hope you and your brothers and sisters out there are all fully vaccinated, or at least in the process of getting vaccinated. Maybe you got one shot down and the other shot is scheduled, but I think we're well on the way. I'm hoping we're well on the way anyway. I know in my department we're over 50 members that have received both shots, and we're pretty happy about that. So please, let's think better days are coming. Let's be optimistic, right? And speaking of better days and things turning the corner a little bit, I am headed off to my first in-person conference in over a year. I think it was last February of 2020 that I last traveled and did a presentation. Well, I'm going to be heading down the road on the New York State Thruway to present at the Turning Stone Resort and Casino for the Pinsky Law Conference, which is a fantastic venue run by a well-known fire service attorney and fellow fire engineering podcaster Brad Pinsky. It's a great conference, absolutely great conference. He hosts it every year. I'm really looking forward to being out again among the brothers and sisters and be in person doing some networking and meeting people. And, we've been able to do some great things, some great webinars via Zoom. I've had some great experiences doing some of these presentations for FASNY and the Missouri Fire School and the National Volunteer Fire Council, and it definitely works. They work out fantastic, and they provide a great venue to get the information out there, especially in these pandemic challenge days. But nothing, in my opinion, nothing beats being at the conferences in person to meet everyone and mingle and share stories and network well after the actual training and classroom sessions are done. So really am looking forward to getting back out on the road and going to the Pinsky Law Conference this coming weekend. And as usual, Brad has lined up some great guests. He's got some great topics, and I'm going to be presenting my officer development class, as well as a new class I'm really excited about. We titled it, How to Lose Members Quickly. And this is going to focus on reasons that the volunteer fire service might lose members within their first year of joining. We talk so often about recruiting members, and we know how hard it is to recruit members and get them through the door, but losing them in their first year is also pretty painful. And also, when I started doing some studying to get ready for the presentation, it happens more often than you would think. But fortunately, there are several common reasons that we lose members, and most of them are preventable. They definitely are. So in the class, we're going to review the causes of this rapid turnover and provide you with some solutions to maybe help increase at least your awareness, but also help you keep new members. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to be teaming up with Attorney Pinsky and I believe Chip Comstock, another fire service attorney, as well as Kurt Verone, who also is a very well-known fire service attorney. And we're going to have a discussion, interactive discussion with the audience, and it's going to focus on rebuilding our emergency services for this century. Kind of focus on things we can do to reconsider how we're operating and things we might be able to change in our organizations, and understand and recognize that we can't run our volunteer fire departments the way we did 100 years ago, or maybe even the way we did 30 years ago. We know the challenges today that we are facing, and it's going to be a fun discussion. It's going to be an interactive discussion, like I said, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with some great ideas for the attendees to consider to address the challenges they're facing back home. So really, really looking forward to this weekend, getting back out, getting on the road, with meeting the brothers and sisters. And speaking of being on the road, as a reminder, FDIC will be back, the king of all fire department conferences. FDIC will be in August this year, August 19th to the 24th. Yep, it will be August, which will be great. It'll be warm and sunny, let's hope. And as you know, FDIC is usually in April. I think you'll agree that it was a safe and prudent move to move it to August this year, and hopefully I'll see you there. Start making your plans. It's obviously a little different this year, a little different timing. Not just being in August, but the start of the conference is a Thursday instead of a Monday, and it's going to finish up on a Tuesday. At the conference, I'll be presenting my 4-hour professional volunteer fire department class, and hopefully I'll continue to have a great group of firefighters on hand. I usually have a good crowd there, and we have a great discussion, and I'd love to see you there and connect with you and talk about things we can all do personally and organizationally to uphold and portray a professional image in our volunteer firehouses back home. So, again, FDIC, August 19th to the 24th in Indianapolis. If you need more info, head over to FDIC.com, and you will get all the information you need. And, folks, on a very somber note, we're reeling in New York State today, as I'm sure brothers and sisters all over the United States are. I know there's every line of duty death is horrendous. Every line of duty injury, it hits us in the gut. And we're still getting information about a very tragic fire in Spring Valley, New York, Rockland County, New York area. Reports are still preliminary, but they had a terrible fire overnight in an assisted living facility. There was a collapse, a missing firefighter, a mayday, and we have a firefighter that's still missing. Other firefighters were injured and hospitalized. Residents were injured and hospitalized. I have a report that one of the residents did die, but the firefighters also saved many lives, and I guess there were many heroic rescues, and there's going to be a lot more information coming out on this fire as it's all still happening, and members are still on scene. I don't know if they found a missing brother or sister yet, but our hearts certainly go out to everybody affected by this tragedy in the Spring Valley, New York area in Rockland County, and just wishing everybody our heartfelt condolences on this tragic fire, and hopefully they all can take comfort in each other and get past this terrible day. And if anything, we can maybe learn from it, as we'd like to do from all these tragedies. But just want them to know that all of us here at Fire Engineering and clearing events and all of us involved in the professional volunteer fire department are thinking of them, and just our sympathy is with them all. So tonight, as we shift gears into the show, I wanted to spend some time talking about a topic that is actually important for the entire fire service, not just the volunteer fire service. It's an important topic, paid volunteer combination. It's really an important topic for all types of departments. It definitely can be more challenging for a volunteer agency, and that's the need to respond quickly to answer our community's call for help, to get out of the barn, and also to bring enough qualified help to the scene. And obviously, the quicker we get there, the better outcome for whatever the emergency is, whether it's a medical call for bleeding control or starting CPR or to deliver a baby. And for a fire, we know, right? We hear it all the time. The quicker we get water on the fire, the better chance we have for everyone going home safely, and also for limiting damage and destruction. So a good response time, or a poor one, right? Conversely, a poor response time can impact the department's professional reputation, no doubt about it. So I want to delve into the topic and maybe offer some ideas as to how we can maybe improve our response times within our volunteer fire service. And I was actually planning on delving into the topic on our show back in February, but my guest had to bail out at the last minute due to a snowstorm that came out of nowhere and caused him all sorts of headaches and caused him to work a lot of extra hours. So he wasn't able to join me, but I don't think we have any storms tonight. Matter of fact, I was outside an hour ago. Beautiful weather here in the Buffalo area. It's over 60 degrees on an absolutely gorgeous night. But anyway, joining me tonight is Michael I knew I was going to say it wrong. Capoziello, and name aside, I think most of you listeners should be aware of him because he's the author of so many articles that have appeared in our trade publications. He's a 36-year member. He's a former chief of the Elmont Fire Department, located in my home state of New York. He's still a department training officer. He's a public information officer. He's also his department's historian. Sounds familiar because it's a lot like me, and interesting enough, he's also a dispatcher. He's a supervising dispatcher, actually, at the Nassau County Fire Communication Unit, which is known as FireCom. So welcome to the show, brother. No snowstorms tonight. I still butchered your last name. I apologize for that. But I want to thank you for taking the time to be with me here tonight, talk about how we can improve our response times.
That's quite okay, Chief. If, like I said to you before, if I had a nickel for every time someone spelled my name or pronounced it wrong, I wouldn't have to work any part-time jobs. So,
anyway. It's not even that hard. You told me how to say it, Capoziello, right? And I'm like, why am I
there you go. That was right that time. That's okay.
Yeah, it's not that hard.
I'm used to it all my life. So,
Well, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you on with us tonight.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
And
thanks for inviting.
No. It's great to have you. Like I said, I've read your articles. I know you're frequently in the FASNY publication, The Volunteer Firefighter, and I find myself agreeing with a lot of the things that you write. And then, interesting enough, the article you had for fire engineering, delayed response, don't accept failure. Then I'm like, I got to get this guy on the show because these are some great topics. But why don't you give us a little background on your fire service career, how you got started, how you became a dispatcher. What was first, volunteer volley or dispatcher? Or give us a little background on your travels through the fire service.
Well, it all started like a lot of kids. I think one of the FASNY articles I wrote a couple months back was about, how when you were a kid chasing the fire horns and the sirens on your bicycle. So I started out as an explorer with the Elmont Fire Department in 1981. So I was 3 years an explorer, and then I went into Elmont Fire Department, Hook and Ladder Company 2, which I'm still in now. So 36 years there. I was assistant chief and chief of department 2008, 2012. I started, like everyone else, taking tests and different things, maybe a career firefighter or a police officer, something along the emergency services line. And I fell into, in 1992, a full-time gig with the Levittown Fire Department, also in Nassau County. And I was there for 3 years, and then I had taken the test for Nassau County Fire Communications. I started there in 96, and dispatcher for 13 years, and I've been a supervisor for 12 years. I split my duties between shift supervision, and I do all the CAD work for the department's procedures. There's 69 fire departments in Nassau County, and they all have their own procedures. So there's a lot of work when they changed. We dispatch about half of them, 34 departments. And I also am in charge of the 2 field comm units we have. We have a small one and a large one, and I do the training on that and upkeep and whatnot. But so that's about it. A firefighter first, then dispatch, and started writing probably about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe. The first article I had was in Firehouse magazine. It was about Belmont Racetrack. So that's Belmont's claim to fame. We cover Belmont Racetrack, and that is a handful every time the Belmont Stakes comes through. But so that's about it in a nutshell.
It's funny you mentioned your FireCom, 69 departments, all with their own procedures. Our center, my dispatch center, is 16 departments, all with their own procedures, and that's hard enough to keep track of. Does this company do this? Does this company do that? Wait, what do they want from mutually? Oh, yeah, that could be a handful. So hats off to you, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely is. We could do an hour talking about that type of stuff. But anyway.
And maybe we will. That's another topic for another day. I'm writing all this stuff down because, you bring up a lot of good points and a lot of good podcasts in the future. So, but for tonight, let's talk about this recent article. I think it came out in Fire Engineering back in December. Delayed response, don't accept failure. And what prompted you to write this article? Something you've personally seen, or just something that you've been mulling around for the last couple of years that you wanted to print out?
Well, as you know, from kind of having the same background I have, seeing things from both sides of the microphone, so to speak, you realize that certain departments really have problems that they need to address, and sometimes they just don't. at least in Nassau County, the big trend is dual response for certain call types. So that's a step in the right direction. They'll request an engine from a neighboring department on automatically and stuff. But yeah, it's something that and at least on Long Island. I mean, when I joined in 1984, I was riding a truck with 3 people, the same way it is now. So we've been hanging on for whatever reason. We've been hanging on with the same system. But I'd say the last 10 years, for certain departments, it's really hitting a critical place where the people in charge really have to take a look at what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let's talk about that traditional model that worked for so long. The volunteer firefighters are at home, and back in the day, the rooftop siren might go off, or maybe they had one of the first Monitor radios or something along, but, home receivers, and then into the digital technology today. But, traditionally what? They're sitting home or they're at work, and they hear the siren go off, or they get the text page or hear their Monitor, and off they go. And that's still how it's done in so many areas, right? And it works for the most part, but as you said, times are changing. Less people are allowed to leave work. Back in the day, I think it was more common for people to leave work. But it does work. It's barely been hanging on. Maybe you happen to be at the firehouse when a call came in, so you're able to hop on the rig and go. But it's funny how you say, how times change and people's expectations change too, right? Working at the alarm office, how many times have people called back a second or third time saying, "Where's the fire department? I called 20 minutes ago." And in fact, it's only been a couple minutes, but
it's something we have to be. Yeah,
it's always like that. But again, the traditional model, either you're at home leaving home, or you happen to be at the firehouse, and then you get on the rig to go when the call comes in. It's been hanging on. But we are seeing cracks in that plan, in that way of doing things. So it is 2021. Our volunteer fire service world is changing, like the world is changing. That's a constant in life. So what can we do to work on this problem? And in your article, you definitely outline a bunch of great solutions to try and improve the response time, because people's expectations change too, right? The volunteer fire service world is different, and people are expecting a timely response. They're not maybe as kind to overlook a delayed response as in the past, are they?
Well, it's definitely in my area. My department board is Queens, FDMY, so a lot of people move from the city into Elmont or Franklin Square or Valley Stream, Floor Park, surrounding towns, and they just think it's a paid fire department. They have no idea about the history of the volunteer fire service and how far we go back. So absolutely, they call the fire department, they call 911, they expect a quick response, and it's sometimes it's difficult to explain to them sometimes when they do confront you on what took so long. Oh, we're volunteers.
Right.
What do you mean? It's new to them. So
yeah, that's true. I never thought of that. You're so close to the city where you are that people, people in our area still. I just heard it said at one of our calls recently, or someone. I think it was just within the past week we had a call, and one of the members told me the citizens were questioning, "You're all volunteer?" They didn't believe it, but. Wow, but no doubt, again, the volunteer fire service is changing, and I don't think it's always bad either. It's not all doom and gloom. I think sometimes we get too focused on the doom and gloom, but I like to say at the conference this weekend, I have a little saying that I'm going to use that, the 70s and the 80s, and even when I joined in early 80s and through the 90s, they were great times. They had great people. The volunteer fire service did great things, but those days are gone, and they're never coming back. However, we can still have a vibrant volunteer fire service and deliver a quality service that is the expectation of our public today. And we can still do great things. And remember, people joining today, your members that join today, these are their good old days. You got to remember that. But we got to understand that the public's expectations are changing, and we're living in a much more scrutinizing world today. It used to be people recognized the volunteer fire department down the road was a very cost-effective and efficient way of providing this much-needed service. Heck, many people knew familiar faces on the volunteer fire department, right? Friends and neighbors serving together, and the volunteer fire department was the center of the community for so many different activities and hosting so many events through the years, and it was just so connected with the community. So it might have not, they weren't too quick to maybe judge or be harsh and critique the volunteer fire company if they had a slow response or maybe members didn't maybe behave appropriately. In fact, they might have even said something along the lines, and I hate this line, and we should never use it as an excuse, well, they're just volunteers. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, no, I hate when that phrase is brought up.
Right.
It's funny you mention that, the good old days for the young guys are happening right now. I actually addressed that in my next FASNY article that's coming out. So we us older guys have to be careful not to keep harping on that, saying that, things suck, because the young guys don't know any better, and they're going to get fed up about hearing things like that, and that could drive somebody away just hearing that.
Yeah,
but,
and it's funny.
Yeah.
I just heard on a podcast I was listening to about the FDNY. I think it was, coming up, they just had the 25th anniversary of their merger with EMS. I think it was 25 years. It was either 25. It was in 1996 that FDNY Fire merged with EMS. So on this podcast, a bunch of retired FDNY firefighters, they were talking about how controversial it was, and that exact line might have been used. This sucks, or this place sucks. What are we doing?
Yep.
But what happened? Anyone working today, for the most part, with 20 years on the job or 15 years on, that's all they've known. They haven't known anything.
Exactly.
So it doesn't suck to them because that's just how it's been. Same in your volunteer firehouse, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we can go on the show just talking about that. I know in my department it was such a huge thing going from pull-up boots to bunker gear, and it's like now the new guys, they look at the pull-up boots and like, what is that? Are those fishing boots? I wouldn't wear that. So they don't know any better. To them the bunker gear is the cool stuff. 20 years from now, who knows what they'll be wearing? But
how about this one? Here's from my own experience. I remember when I was chief of department, we ordered a ladder tower. That was my big truck committee assignment when I was chief back in 2008 or 2007. We put a committee together, but we had to have the order put in by a cutoff date. I can't remember the exact date, but it had to be in by the end of the year. I believe by the end of the year in 2008, because in 2009 the new standard was taking effect that had mandated the chevron striping on the back of the fire truck. And we had a member at the time, well, that is terrible. It looks like a service truck. It's the death of the fire service. I want to get our ladder truck ordered so we don't have to have the chevron striping. And the sales rep actually said to this man, this old timer in our fire department at the time, sir, you understand that in just a few years' time, this is going to be the way every single fire truck looks. And what do you see today? Chevron striping on the back of every fire. Does anyone even bat an eye?
Nope. And to the new guys, that's what they see, and they, just go along with it. There's no issue with it.
Right. Oh gosh. So, hey, back to this response time. So I'm never going to criticize leaving home or members having to assemble at the firehouse to get the rigs rolling, because it is the volunteer fire service after all. It's been very successful for generations and in most cases working. But we have to be honest and admit it doesn't always work well, and there may be ways to improve on that. And I know there's two things, as the late, great Chief Alan Brunacini used to say, God rest his soul, two things firefighters hate, right? Change and the way things are. But there may be ways to improve our response time. So that brings us to this article you wrote, delayed response, don't accept failure, which again was in Fire Engineering back in December. And you really addressed this topic really well, because sometimes we do bury our heads in the sand and we don't admit it when we're having problems, or worse, we don't try to take steps to try and improve upon it. And I love how you started the article off with the line, firefighters hate failure. That is so true, by the way. And immediately in the second sentence, I love what you put in there, so perfect for tonight's show. In the second sentence, you discuss how firefighters strive to ensure their actions are timely, professional. So you agree we can be professional volunteers, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. The people in charge of these departments that are having problems, everybody has their ups and downs for the most part, but if you're in a down cycle, you have to recognize the situation. That's the first step in this. You have to recognize the situation and all right, sit down and say, okay, we have to change things, and then that's where we can get into different ideas. This is what you have to do.
Right. And you review different types of failures. I think you have 3 different scenarios that illustrate a type of failure that could be worked on and corrected in your article. And you so accurately point out that one type of failure has been accepted in practice for so many volunteer fire departments, and they actually become immune to the failure. So I want to delve into those 3 different scenarios that you outline in the article. And the first one is the driver gets in an accident. The second one is
exactly.
Go ahead.
The accident. When a rig gets into an accident, right away everyone involved, we want to know what happened. You want an investigation. You want to see what happened. Whose fault was it? And things happened. The other scenario was about stretching a line. There's some sort of big delay in getting water. The officers and the chiefs, everyone's going to want to know what happened. The hydrant man, did he screw up? Did the guy stretch and hose? What went wrong to delay the water? And then the other one was a dispatch scenario. A dispatcher, puts in a wrong address or something along those lines. But in each of those cases, there's no doubt that a mistake happened, and we want to get to the bottom of it, and we want to fix it so it doesn't happen again. There's no hesitation with that. But yet, when the alarm goes off and it takes us 11 minutes to get to the scene, that's a huge mistake or failure, and yet we accept that. And that's the whole premise on people in charge have to recognize this.
So we can't fall back on the line. We're only volunteers. These things happen.
No, especially since our main job is responding to emergencies. This is the main thing. This is what we're here for. And if we're going to consistently fail at that, something has to be done. Right.
And you offer some great ideas on how we might be able to address response problem issues and get some help to the scene as quickly as possible. And the very first thing I think you point out is you have to be honest and recognize that these things do happen, but we shouldn't let them happen. You shouldn't bury your head in the sand. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So, what were some of the ideas that you put forth in this article about helping maybe response times? Right. Like the first thing you talk about, I believe, is just looking at the availability of your crew and recognize that hey, things change. It can change weekly or even monthly. Right.
Yes, the availability of volunteer fire services is forever changing. It's a fluid process. You could, in the summer months, you got all the younger guys around. They're not in school. They're always around. When school starts in September, you might lose some of those people. You might have a group of kids who young guys that just, I hate saying kids, but they are kids. They don't have full-time jobs yet, so they're hanging around the firehouse, and they can't wait to chase the automatic alarms all day. But they're there. So you have to see what's going on, especially smaller departments. You have to realize that, my 2 guys that were around all the time, they just went into the police academy or the fire academy or wherever. So now they're not going to be around during the day anymore. So now you might have to adjust what you have to do. Maybe have automatic mutual aid from a neighboring department or certain call types. You have to evaluate your manpower issue.
Right, on a regular basis. It's not a one and done. And I used to. We changed something in my department a while back, probably over a decade ago now. We used to lose members when they went to college. In other words, when they went to college, we said, okay, bye. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't even let them serve with us when they came back on break. We changed that. We now have a college leave program because we recognize how dumb that was, because these kids are back for Thanksgiving break, for Christmas break, for extended period. So that's something we changed to say, let's take advantage of these people when they're around. And like you said, sometimes during the summer they're around a lot. So
Yep.
take advantage of it.
You got your breaks during the school year, and you got some guys that are like so into this stuff that they'll come home for weekends, and if they're officially on leave but they're here for the weekend, it's silly not to have them ride in the trucks. That's a good thing you did. Most departments, I believe, if we did a poll, probably if you're on leave, you're on leave. That's it. But a lot of things are changing now.
Yeah, the biggest thing, there's some logistical things that have to be worked out because we have what we call a line clerk who's in charge of tracking people for their points and getting credit for drill and training. But we have to make sure we notify him when the college kid is back for a weekend or a week or a month, just because they have to be officially on duty and get covered in case they get hurt or something. We need to make sure that our paperwork's in order, but it's doable and it's worked for us, so it is very possible.
It's absolutely doable. You just gotta want to do it.
The other thing too about and you're so right about, I think of all the young, we'll call them kids, with all the young late teens, early 20-year-olds that love to hang out at the firehouse. And I used to, when I was a chief of department, nothing made me happier. I would work a shift till midnight, and I would come home at quarter after midnight, stop in the firehouse to get paperwork or whatever, just to see what's going on, and to have 10 guys and gals up there watching TV and hanging out and loving being at the firehouse. You've got to create an atmosphere at the firehouse, a topic yet for another show, but make it a true firehouse where people want to be and want to hang out at and have fun at, because, my God, what does that do for your response time right there, Chief?
Oh, absolutely. Well, they have to buy into the whole thing, and that goes back to the other thing. If you keep saying, "Oh, things just ain't the same anymore," this sucks. This is horrible the way we're doing it. They're not going to buy into it. They have to buy into it, and they have to be at the firehouse. They want to spend time. They want to come to drill. They want to make it a great experience for them, which it can be. So
you want them to be.
They have to be.
You
there.
want them to want to be there. You want them to want to be there, and not create a negative atmosphere. And I talked to you earlier about before we went live about how we have to, even us older guys, need to understand that times are changing a little bit. And let's look at the snowbird, right? We all have those older members that go south through the winter. I know departments that write them off. You're done. You're no good to us. But then they come back for April, May, June, July, August, or even June, July, August, September, whatever it is. There's 3, 4, 5, 6 months that they can give you and maybe give you some good productive hours. And maybe they're just drivers. But do you want to get rid of people like that just because they go south for 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, sometimes I think a lot of our rules were created in the teens and the 20s, the 30s, when some departments had waiting lists. So, it was a different time back then. So if somebody didn't cut it, it was easy to get rid of them because there was somebody right behind that wanted their spot. So, but it's not the way it is now. So a lot of these things have to be looked at and changed because we want to try and keep as many people for as long as possible.
Whenever we bring up a new idea in our firehouse, I usually have a line that I use, and it's, what harm is there in trying? So if there's a new idea that's designed to hold on to a member or create a different membership category or whatever it is that can help you with membership and ultimately response time, what do we have to lose by at least trying to see how it works? Or it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
There's no harm in trying.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It's up to the newer leadership to recognize that. It's absolutely a spot-on point.
Yeah. What is there to harm? What harm? I just used that line a month or so ago with something new we did at our firehouse. So what are some of the solutions? You outline a bunch of solutions, and I know one of the big ones that you start off right away with is mutual aid, the automatic mutual aid. Give us your thoughts on that. And, the big downfall with that I hear from people is I think Chief Goldfeder calls it where you're mooching off your neighbors. Is there a fine line there? You got to be careful with it. And what's your thoughts on the mutual aid and the automatic mutual aid to help your response time?
Well, it's a standard thing now in Nassau County for many departments, especially in the North Shore region of our county, where they will call a neighboring department for an engine on a certain call type. Phone alarm for a fire, smoke in the house. Some departments even automatic alarms. They recognize that they have problems during the day, and they'll call an engine in. I haven't heard of anything where guys don't like doing that. We all love going to mutual aid calls, especially when it's a real fire or whatever. But I don't really see any problem with that yet, where there's any burnout. But that's not to say that might happen. But that it's a thing that it needs to be done. I think that's the easiest thing, to get together with your neighbors and set up a mutual aid, especially if departments are not that busy. You just doubled your alarms in certain cases. So most people are going to go for that. If there is a problem, the problem is, that department beat us in, first due to our own area. Well, you know what? Then maybe that'll put a fire under somebody to all right, now we got to respond better then. So I have heard some things like that. They beat us in. Well, that's
ask the resident whose house is on fire if they care.
Exactly. So then you got to step up your game if you want to do it. But
I think there can be a real good automatic mutual aid agreement worked out, especially for confirmed fires, or the dispatcher has a really good feeling that it is a legitimate fire. Automatic tone out of automatic mutual aid units coming in. Like you said, you could be doubling your resources immediately. The key there is, and we'll get into that, is training together and getting to know each other. But then conversely, you hear sometimes automatic mutual aids being toned out for the residential fire alarm, things like that. And that's where some volunteers have told me that they're not leaving home anymore for those, because the host department maybe is getting there first all the time, and it's nothing. It's at the smells and bells call, so they're not leaving. So then when it does turn out to be something real, they're behind the eight ball. So their feeling is, save the automatic mutual aid for when it's a confirmed fire or a strong indication of a confirmed fire.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Most of our departments that do it is for phone alarms for fires. And there are certain departments where we have written in the procedures to where the dispatcher has the authority to upgrade the alarm on the quantity and quality of the calls. So we can start out mutual aid assignment based on if we know that the likelihood of them going to work or whatnot.
Yeah, it just happened in my area yesterday. My department went automatic mutual aid with our neighbors to the east because they had a garage fire, pretty good fire, and we arrived with them or just after them, and everyone worked well together, and they did a quick knock on it, and it worked out great. And that's how we do it in our area. It's for the confirmed fire or the strong suspicion of fire. However, if you're in an area that, and there's no shame in it, maybe it's daytime and you have no availability of manpower during the day, there's no shame in setting up the automatic aid for the neighboring companies to go with you for the fire alarm or the routine call. None at all. Do what's best for your area and for your residents.
Yeah, absolutely. If high occupancy buildings during the day, it's, it might be a good idea to do that. But for the most part, that's the easiest step I see right now that a department can change overnight. You have a problem, reach out to your neighboring chief, have a meeting, discuss what you want to do, and you can change that instantly. That's the easiest way right now.
And then what? Train and work together from time to time. You think that would be a good idea? Get to know your neighbors and understand. You know what? They're not much different than you once you get to know them.
Absolutely. Training is a big thing, especially if your district has rest homes and garden apartments and maybe 5-story apartment buildings, and your neighboring department just has a residential 2-story and commercial 1-story taxpayers, and they're not going to be familiar with some of these tactics that you're going to use in a garden apartment. So it's very important that if you're depending on these departments to come in and assist you, that they have ideas on standpipes and how to stretch and special considerations that you might have that they don't have in their own district. So when it comes to something like that, it's very important to train with your neighbors.
Yep, for sure, and you build some great camaraderie doing that too, and and you learn ahead of time. What's their large diameter hose? What's our large diameter hose? How do we connect it together? What's unique on their rig? If I'm sent for a ground ladder, where is it on their rig? I mean, are we operating on the same radio frequencies? What's their procedure? In our area, we know that our neighbor to the east is using the hydrant assist valve. We practice with them how we're going to, because they're going to drop at the hydrant. We're probably going to be coming next to hook it to the hydrant. We need to know how the hydrant assist valve works. So we've been working on that with them. And, it prevents a lot of stumbling when the actual incident hits, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Very important.
Yeah. So we get our mutual aid taken care of. What are some other ideas you got for improving response if we implement auto aid? What else can we do? Is there you talk a little bit about in-house crews, at-home crews. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Those are some great ideas.
Yeah, well, in-house crews, I can see is the next step of the volunteer fire service in many places. I think Maryland, Virginia, a lot of departments like that, they have the combination departments. But even houses that are all volunteer, they have people in-house, in uniform. You'd never know the difference that they're volunteer or not. They don't have the home response method. I'm not 100% sure, but maybe if there's a working fire, then the people that aren't in the firehouse can come in their own personal cars. But for the most part, they have crews in quarters, and they always have crews in quarters, 24/7. That is something that we could work out as well, I believe. It's probably one of the next steps that you could try before you try and go combo or career or whatever. In-house crews is a big deal.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I can see that definitely becoming something that's going to be talked about more and more. We're starting to talk about it in our area. Again, there's some legitimate logistical things that have to be worked out, at least in how we track people's what we call points for. They have to meet a certain number of calls every month, but nothing that's that would prevent us from doing something like that. And my gosh, for the routine call, especially when you're sending out a staffed EMS rig or a staffed engine, oh my gosh, how great is that for the resident, And it's great for the firefighter sitting home too to know that routine call is being handled right away. And if it is a legitimate fire, now you have an engine rolling up that's maybe fully staffed and ready to go with some well-trained and qualified firefighters. Yeah,
and doing a system like that, you might even pick up some people. You might have some people that, say your department, you got to make 25% of the alarms. Maybe somebody can't really guarantee you that I can give you 25%, but I know I can give you 36 hours a month of standby time, so I can give you 3 12-hour shifts or whatnot. And that is something that should be looked at. You might pick up people that way. And then I also brought up go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the at-home duty crews is another idea that you can do. A lot of departments in Nassau at one time or other, especially EMS end, have tried this. You assign crew members for the overnights. So when a call comes in, though you know that those people are going to go to it. And if I'm assigned to tonight's duty crew, and I can't make it for whatever reason, I reach out to the officer or another person to take my shift, and I'll cover their shift type of deal. So at least it's still a response from home, but at least you have people going to come. You're going to have a crew for an engine, a ladder, or EMS. This is at-home duty crews is something that you could be looked at and easily done also.
Yeah, absolutely. We do that in our area, actually. In my immediate area, we call it a squad system, where people are put on a squad. In most cases, it's still volunteer. Some make it mandatory. You have to go, and there's repercussions if you don't. Others, it's an agreement that you're going to try and go. It's between, a lot of companies do between midnight and 6 a.m. It's for the EMS calls or other calls where you might not need a full company response. You only need half a dozen people or so. And it really can cut down on the amount of times people got to get out of bed, and it can really help out. So it's another thing to consider, cutting down on some of the requirements for your members and also providing a good response for your residents. So, and there's apps that help with it too. There's the I Am Responding app where people can click to say, hey, I'm going. So you can even have a good idea as to whether you're going to have enough manpower or not. So I know sometimes one of the problems you put in the article is sometimes people think, oh, John's going to drive. He drives all the time. Well, John might not be around that day. So that's where an app can really help too.
Yeah, my company ran a tiller for about 14 years, and that is one of the things that we had our own little on the iPhone thing, like a group me thing it's called, and we would put in there like who was the chauffeur, who's around, because that would happen, especially when you need two chauffeurs. I'd be working in the yard and I'm thinking, oh, okay, Joe's off, he'll go, and he's doing something. Cappy's off, he's going to go, and none of us show up, and now they're waiting for the second driver. So that is something that is a good technology that I approve of.
Yeah, it definitely can help, and I'm learning more and more about that app. We now schedule meetings on it that it'll send out a text alert to remind people that the meeting's coming up, and we use it at the fire alarm office. It ties in with our CAD, and we can look and see how many members are going and kind of tell if they're going to have a good turnout or not. And I'll tell you, sometimes it works out good for this. We have what we call silent alarms. I know there's different terms for them all over the country, but in our neck of the woods, a silent alarm is a call where only a chief needs to go or a senior officer because someone just needs help investigating something in their house. It doesn't need the whole tone out for the whole company. So we'll call the silent, and sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, you page it out and you're waiting for someone to call and say, I'm going to take it. Well, as they're waking up, they can just hit the little button on their phone and tell us that at the alarm office we'll see, okay, Chief Smith is slowly getting out of bed, so he's going to be responding in a second. We don't have to page it out a second time. That's a great use of that app, though.
That is, yeah. We're actually currently building a new CAD system, which is going to have capabilities to use one of those systems. So that'll be nice when that's done.
Yep, changing times, So crews work out great, as you said. And as I travel the country, see that being done. The in-house crews where people sign up for a number of hours per week or per month, and that seems to work. And then the at-home crews, another great idea. You're on duty that night, so A, you're not drinking. B, you're keeping yourself available to respond. You're getting coverage if you can't be around that night. So that works great as well. And another thing you point out in the article, and it can't happen everywhere, it depends on your area, but you seem to have some experience with this, and that's the college program, right, where you get college students to serve with you. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, we actually don't have it right now. We have a lot of good colleges in Nassau County. Got Hofstra, got Adelphi, CW Post, New York Institute of Technology. These are all good schools. And a lot of the departments that cover these areas, they should look into one of these systems that I know is big in Pennsylvania and Maryland, where, you provide room and board for a member and for free, and in exchange, they'll run calls for you. And this system keeps many volunteer departments alive in Pennsylvania and Maryland and probably elsewhere. But it's something that a lot of departments, if you do have access to a really good school, you should look into trying a program like this.
Yeah, what we did in my area, which we had luck at, we built a brand new firehouse in 1997. We still call it the new firehouse, even though it's 20-something years old. But we don't have a bunk room or any room for people to spend the night. That would require an addition where we don't have room for right now. But anyway, what worked for us and has worked for other companies in our area anyway is we have colleges in our area, and we will allow, if a volunteer firefighter from another area of the country is going to college in our area, we will accept them to serve with us as a volunteer member. They leave their dorm or wherever they're residing to go to calls with us, but we'll take advantage of them while they're in our area. And there's minimum requirements they have to make, and there's also minimum training requirements we would want before we accept them. But it's worked out great. We've brought in one member. We brought in several members, and one has decided when he graduated from college that he was staying with us, and he's still with us. Just bought a house in our fire district and is married, and it looks like we're going to have him for a long time. It worked out great.
That's great.
Us.
Yeah, it's a really good thing to look into.
Yeah, whether you have him bunking at your firehouse, which I know there's been a lot of success stories with that, but in our case we couldn't do that, so this to us was the next best thing to do. But and then I know there's companies that they offer their college students that are volunteering with them, meals, and they have a weight room and maybe a washer and dryer facility. So there's a lot of incentives for a college student. I know if I was a parent, paying those college bills, if my son or daughter wanted to do something like that, I'd be all for it, and I'd maybe be really encouraging them even if they didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I would think any department that's building a new station or thinking about building a new station, this is something that they should look into. Even if for the immediate future you're not doing it for college live-ins, you should do it for the future. Have some sort of legitimate bunk room for weather standbys, or you hate to say it, but if you're building a station now, it's going to be there for another 50, 75 years. And you don't know, 20 years from now, you might have career people there. So you got to build for the future. So anybody building a new fire station, I think they definitely got to look into living space to be planned into the new station.
Yeah, I agree. If we had to do it all over again, I think we definitely would. Again, our volunteer fire service has to change in order to survive, and that's definitely one thing I think you're going to see more of, like you said. Another idea you had, which some areas do and some don't, but you're a firm believer in the junior programs, aren't you?
This is the absolute number one thing that I approve of, and I think any department is crazy not to explore this type of program. I think in my department, probably, I've just thrown a figure out there, maybe 14 out of the last 17 chiefs have all been explorers. It's a great way to continuously have people interested in the fire service. And another thing that I always stress is that not only do they really understand the fire service and they learn a lot of things, they understand the firehouse culture, which is something that can be very hard to teach someone, especially the newer generations, without getting political. But if you're in an Explorer program, you know what firehouse culture is. And I always tell these young guys that come around, is like, the way things are in our firehouse is the way it is in a firehouse upstate New York, in Pennsylvania, in Los Angeles, in Nevada. It's just a culture. Do some things have to change? Sure. But it's a way of life, and it's a culture. And being a junior, you get exposed to that, and you understand what comes next and what happens and the rite of passage, and being a rookie, not getting offended when you have to do the rookie tasks, taking out the garbage and cleaning this or going for the coffee run. They understand what it's about, and it's a great thing. We have 2 high schools in our district and a third that's not in the district, but kids go to that school that live in our district. So we have 3 high schools that we can do recruitments at. And it's really a fantastic thing. I think any department should have a program like that.
Absolutely. And, I had a saying, I still say it. I'd say to some parents, I used to say it when I was chief, and I'd be talking to them at block parties or community events or our open house when we talk about junior members. I used to say, where else would you rather have your young son or daughter be on a Friday night? Up at the firehouse with great role models, learning some great skills, or out on the streets doing God knows what I was doing as a high school 17 or 16-year-old. So they always got to chuckle. It made a good point. So, yeah, junior pro. You know what else, Chief, I find and I like to say is these lessons that they're learning A lot of great, as you said, fire department culture lessons and rite of passage, but they're picking up life lessons in how organizations run, how boards work, even at that contentious business meeting that they're at. That will prepare them for the contentious meeting they're at later on in their career, wherever it is. It teaches life
100%.
lessons
Yep.
that they can take those lessons everywhere they go in life. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
I agree. Junior programs are phenomenal and a great feed for continued membership, which can help with your response times as well. You know, one
it's
idea I used
constant flow of people coming in.
Yep. And I got to be honest, my department's missed the boat on it. I have 4 children. Not one of them joined the fire department. The chief that came after me, we both have 4 daughters. He had 4, I had 4. Not one of our daughters joined the fire department. We somehow, and that's the same for a lot of our members my age that had children. For some reason, our kids didn't join. We did something wrong there. We really did. So we're working on that. We're working on that because we agree that it's constant. If you can keep people coming in, because we got a neighbor a couple doors to the east of us that has a fantastic junior program, and a lot of their current 20-something and 30-something-year-old members started as juniors, so it's worked well for them. So it definitely pays off a huge dividend if it's set up correctly and run correctly. So in one thing I used to do with my members, you mentioned earlier about being fluid, and I meant to mention this when you said this at the beginning of the show about, be aware of what's going on in your department. I actually would stand up at our business meeting or in our newsletter that goes out once a month. I would highlight if we were having a problem. Like I identified in my department when I was chief, we had a real problem between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. getting the rigs out. And we identified it because, what we learned was it's our younger members who had they were getting up and ready for work, and they were also getting their kids off to school. So it proved out to be a very troubling time for us. So I appealed to our middle-aged and even our retired members and said, okay, I understand you guys might not be getting out of bed maybe at 1 or 2 a.m. anymore because maybe they're a past chief, past officer, they did it for 15 years, whatever. They're not getting out of bed. But I pleaded with them, okay, can I get you to go to the firehouse at 8:30 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning for that call because I really need you then because my young 20 and 30-something-year-olds, they got the young kids and they're getting them off to school or getting themselves off to the office at an early hour. And it worked. And so sometimes you just got to embrace good, open, honest communication and have an honest conversation with the membership.
Absolutely, yeah. And there are trouble times during the day. Here's what you got to look at. Those hours, especially shift workers, people are going to work or people are coming home from work. And then, they might have did a midnight shift and they're not really home yet. So there are certain target hours during the day that you could try and do some sort of program, but get guys to come out. And there's lots of things to try. Like I said, you just got to be honest with it. And I find when you're honest with people and you tell them, look, I need your help with this, then sometimes people need a little nudging to get a fire under them, and they'll come out for you. You just got to be honest and say, look, we got a problem. I need your help, and they'll help.
Yeah. And as a reminder for our listeners, I just want to remind everyone that you are listening to Fire Engineering Talk Radio. In tonight's episode of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, I'm Tom Merrill, and my guest is Michael Capoziello, and we're talking about ideas to maybe improve our response times in the volunteer fire service, and we've been talking about his article that was in Fire Engineering back in December, Delayed Response, Don't Accept Failure. And again, the premise here is as firefighters, we hate failure. We hate when we make mistakes. And when we experience mistakes, we're going to work hard and we're going to train hard. We're going to look at what the problem was and try and fix the problem. And it's quite common, though, for the volunteer fire departments to not address one problem, and that is what we've been talking about tonight, and that's responding in a quick and timely manner. So we've been talking about it tonight on this podcast. And Chief, is there anything else that you think can help improve the volunteer fire department's response time before we decide to wrap things up tonight?
Well, the only other thing I think I put in the article was consolidation, which is really a hot topic out in Nassau County. I don't think we'll see anything like that for quite a few years. But I believe up in your neck of the woods there have been quite a few consolidations through the years, and that's a way to save departments. Am I right? There's been a few up by you.
Oh, absolutely.
That have consolidated.
It's a topic that comes up. Yes, it comes up continuously too. And it can be very controversial. Obviously, volunteer fire departments have a long history of prideful service, and if it's not done correctly and it's not approached in the correct manner, walls can go up and people can get very defensive before the first step is even taken. But some have been done successfully, some have not been done successfully. So what's your take on it? You think if it's done correctly, it can really help maybe improve the response time and capabilities of the volunteer fire department?
Well, it's better to do it on our terms than the politicians' terms. If push comes to shove and something happens where the politicians get involved and have to consolidate fire departments for whatever reason, if it was a tragedy or something happened, it's better to do it on our terms. It might be a way to save certain departments from not existing anymore. You really have to take a look at it, especially if department, a lot of in Nassau County, most departments are departments. They're not companies, but a lot of upstate departments, I believe they're fire companies. So you're operating out of one house with a couple pieces of apparatus. It's not crazy to consolidate with other companies. You're not losing your identity. You're still going to be, whatever hose company too, but you're going to be part of a consolidated region, and you can't be afraid to at least seriously look at something like that.
Don't be afraid to change, right? What do you got to lose by trying? And again, to the person who's having the emergency, it's all about getting there quickly to help them in their time of need. They're not going to be really carrying one bit, maybe the name on that department rig or how far they came, just that they got there quickly to help them out.
Yeah, well, that's the main thing. You got to realize what we're here for is to serve the public. You can't lose track of that, and it's something that some departments really have to look at to move ahead if they want to keep pace with its changing times. Like you said, the firemen don't like change, but sometimes you got to do it. You want to survive,
Yeah, and that requires what? Ditching an ego, maybe having a little humility and being honest with what your capabilities are and being honest with what change could possibly bring to make things even better. I love what you put in the article. I could see the historian in you because I already underlined this for future words in any of my presentations on history, but I never thought about how except for maybe some religious organizations, the local volunteer fire department could be among the oldest continuously run organization in your community. It's often older than the police department.
Most fire companies even are older than police organizations.
Yeah, that's And when you said that, you're so right. Yeah, think back to my own town. You're so right. The school districts, the post office. Wow. So you can see how losing that established old identity can be a big deal. So as much as we recognize change is needed,
sometimes when we did some
right.
changes, and some of the senior guys would approach me and complain about something, one of the things I said to them is like, look, I want to come back to the Elmont Fire Department for their 100th anniversary, and it's still an all-volunteer organization. Don't you want it to be the way it is now? To keep that way, we have to change with the times. We can't just say no. We're not changing. This is the way we're doing it. And before you know it, then we're going to be in a real world of problems. So it's you got to accept change. You got to accept change. You got to be that older guy that accepts change.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm going to try and exemplify that as I continue to age, because you really can't stop that, can you?
No, not at all. Time flies, man.
I did our we got an acquired structure. Our normal training night is Wednesday night, and we have an acquired structure this week. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday they're doing some training, and I was with the boys and girls last night doing some search and rescue. We smoked the house real good, and there I was at 58 years old, dragging dummies down a hallway and rescuing people, and I'm like, holy cow. My wife was all worried when I left. Said, "You are coming home to me, right?" I said, "Yes, dear."
Oh.
But train.
That's great.
So,
that's great.
You know, in addition, and I'm gonna plug a future show, because you and I talked pre-show about so many other topics we can talk about, and we didn't mention this one. So I'm gonna pre-plug a future topic that I'm definitely gonna do, because it came to me as we were talking tonight. But in addition to a timely response, I think the volunteer fire department, a professional volunteer fire department anyway, needs to ensure that those members that are responding are trained and capable and able to adequately perform the duties that are expected of them. And I thought back, I think Billy Goldfeder wrote an article last year or 2 years ago, no disrespect to anybody, none at all, just the state of the volunteer fire service today. And the article talked about, you know, in a volunteer fire department which had a fire during the day, and I think it was a true story, maybe not, maybe it was a made-up scenario, but something we can identify with. I know I can in my own department. Depending on the day, you might get a driver that's 70 years old, and the only person with them is maybe a 16 or 17-year-old junior. That can happen. So
that happens all the time. Yep, that happens all the time.
And no disrespect to them at all. Their intentions are honorable and good. That 70-year-old driver could be so well trained and capable, maybe a past officer, whatever. But we need to make sure we're backfilling with, you know, there's members coming that are trained, capable, and willing to support and help, and a subject for another day as well.
Yep, absolutely. A lot of stuff can be covered.
Yeah, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on with me tonight. I know we've gone just about an hour, which is my goal now on these podcasts, because we're finding that's in the perfect podcast world, that's what people really like. So I appreciate you coming on to talk about things we can do to improve our response time, and mainly, you know, don't accept failure for delayed response. So, you know, we've got to be honest. We've got to monitor our situation and change it as needed, and definitely never fall back on that line. We're only volunteers, so the response is what it is, you know. Think ahead of time about what you can do in your firehouse. Is it auto aid when warranted? If so, train together, have a good plan in place. Look at in-house duty crews. It works in a lot of areas of the country. A lot of areas of the country are having tremendous success with people doing hours program and doing in-house crews. Can you set your stay-at-home crews up a little better? Can you use some of today's technology to make sure you have adequate staffing, to have members responding from home to get the rigs out? In your area, can you look at college programs, providing room and board maybe for some college students, or at least accepting college students in your area from other areas, and give them the perks of your firehouse in some way, shape, or form while they respond for you? Can you maybe establish or expand your junior or explorer program to help feed the future line of succession in your departments? And embrace open and honest communication with your membership, and let them know if you're having problems and where those problems are. Reach out to people in your department that might be able to help you out and step it up a little bit to improve your response time. And don't be afraid to look at other ideas and change if needed.
Yep, absolutely. Good
well,
stuff.
Chief, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. And again, I know
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If anybody wanted to reach out to you, had questions for you, I know you write a lot about the volunteer fire service. You have a great article that just came out this month in the FASNY publication regarding mutual aid. You've done a lot of articles on radio communication. If anybody had questions for you, wanted to reach out to you, can you give them an email address or a phone? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
I'll give you the email. It's I'm going to spell it out. It's Capo, C-A-P-O, 70821 at optonline, ONLINE.net. So it's Capo 70821 at optonline.net.
Fantastic, and I look forward to future articles from you. I look forward to having you on another show to talk about some of these other subjects, and I look forward to seeing you at a training event now that things are slowly opening up. Hopefully, we'll see you down the road somewhere.
Absolutely, it's been great, Chief. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for being on tonight, Cap or Chief. I appreciate it. Well, they call you Cap, right?
Yeah, Capo, whatever.
Capoziello. I got the name down now, but thank you.
Yes, you
Chief
did. By
Capoziello.
the end, you got it down.
I did.
Excellent.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here tonight, and great
be
topics,
safe
great
out
ideas.
There.
You too, brother. Stay safe.
Okay. Be good.
You too, brother. Thank you. So, again, thanks to Fire Engineering, thanks to Chief Bobby Halton, thanks to Clarion Events for supporting my podcast and all the other great podcasts that are out there covering so many topics within our fire service. I'm honored to be among the many podcasts that are supported by Chief Halton, Fire Engineering, and Clarion Events. And I remain committed to all you, all my listeners, to continue to bring you topics of relevance regarding our volunteer fire service. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, feel free to reach out to me at tamerrill63@AOL.com. That's T-A-Merrill, M-E-R-R-I-L-L, 63 at AOL.com. Yes, AOL, we laugh about that all the time, don't we? But shoot me your ideas on any future shows you'd like me to talk about or guests you'd want me to have on. Check out any of my social media platforms, including the Professional Volunteer Fire Department Facebook page, Instagram, or Twitter. I'm always posting articles and topics, motivational words of wisdom, all that regarding our wonderful volunteer fire service. And I also have a YouTube channel. Please give that a subscription. I have all my podcasts on there. I've got some historical videos on there, trying to update that as often as possible. So give that a check. And I'm still working on getting my website up and running. But the bottom line is, people, I'd love to hear from all of you. So feel free to reach out to me through any of those platforms and tell me what you're doing in your department to make it more professional. Tell me what you think we should do in our fire service to make it more professional. Tell me what ideas you have, like Chief Capoziello had, to improve response times in our volunteer fire service. My next show is scheduled for Tuesday, April 27th, and I look forward to, again, talking about our volunteer fire service and any topics and events that are relevant to it. I got a lot of different ideas, a lot of different guests lined up, so I promise you another hour of good, insightful information on Tuesday, April 27th. Thank you again for tuning in, and again, our deepest condolences and sympathies and support I want to extend out to the Rockland County, New York firefighters, especially the Spring Valley firefighters who had that tragic fire overnight at the assisted living facility. Our thoughts are with you, and you are in our prayers, and we are thinking of you. Folks, developing, maintaining, and portraying a professional image is the duty and responsibility of all of us firefighters, paid or volunteer. It's really that simple. No matter where you are, no matter who you serve, your residents are owed professional service delivered by professional firefighters representing a professional organization. Thanks again for listening in tonight, and we will talk to you again at the end of April. Stay safe. God bless.